Yes. Now we can dive into more hip hop related topics, and from talking about trying to prevent crime into talking about a literal criminal. We all remember, and I don't even say this in this way. We all remember Fetty Wap, Mr. Trap Queen,
Yep.
1738. Baby, won't you come my
All
way?
right.
Oh, that was him?
Sorry,
Oh shoot.
we're not vocalists on here. But anyway, so I don't want to say salute, but yeah, we remember Fetty Wap. An interesting interview came out recently. It's crazy that when you're a rapper, you can still do interviews from jail. Came out where I'll read the headline, but I'll read the more context. Fetty Wap says his music he was putting out, the music he was putting out, quote unquote, wasn't doing good, so it led him back to selling drugs. It ain't nobody else's fault that I'm here. So, Fetty Wap is opening up about what landed him in prison. In an exclusive interview with Double XL, the Trap Queen artist reflected on the reason he went back to selling drugs and revealed that he felt his music wasn't doing well, so he had to go back to what I know how to do. In the interview with the news publication, Mr. Fetty, stated, "Nobody made me do it. Nobody forced me to do it. You know what I'm saying? When I put myself in that situation, I ain't really think for the long run. I'm thinking I could just run up a few $1 million and I'm good and I'm gonna be good forever. I ain't never had no financial lace. I never had no financial guidance, like a person to really guide me the right way. It was just like everybody just didn't care. As long as they got money, as long as they got money, they money. They just didn't give a F. You know what I'm saying? He added, when I wanted to start doing ish, this is what I know how to do. It was like I'm being honest with myself. I know, you know what I'm saying? Like, the music wasn't really doing that good. I'm putting out music, nobody's paying attention. So I'm like, man, F it. I'm gonna go back to what I know. Instead of pursuing my career harder or going harder to make people listen, man, I kind of was just a coward. You know what I'm saying? Like, Jesus, like I'm falling off. F it. I ain't about to look like it. You know what I'm saying? Why do you have to include that? I guess it's just literally like text to speech what he was saying. You know what I'm saying? I was a coward for that, and I was just like, I can't let my family down. I wasn't about to. I wasn't for the to be like I'm outside. N word. I'm really just doing it for real. I really. I wasn't. I wasn't for none of that. Jesus Christ. A
Oh,
part of
okay,
that.
okay.
A part of that wasn't me. A part of that, you have to translate the N word language. Anyway, just to dang it, did I get rid of this? I thought I posted it somewhere. Just to bring everybody up to speed, because I mentioned the songs, but damn it, just to bring everybody up to speed about what the brother was sentenced for, or what the specific ins and outs. This was by CBS News. Rapper Fetty Wap was sentenced to 6 years in prison for drug trafficking, officials said Wednesday. The rapper, whose legal name is Willie Jr. Maxwell II, was one of the multiple defendants charged and found guilty of being part of an organization that distributed more than 100 kilograms of cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl and crack cocaine in Long Island and New Jersey. He was arrested in New York City's Citi Field, home of the Mets baseball team, shortly before he was scheduled to perform a concert there in October 2021. Maxwell was initially released on bond, but he has been in custody since August 2022. When his bail was revoked, he later pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute 500 grams or more of cocaine. The minimum sentence for such a charge is 5 years. So, and on Wednesday morning, the U.S. District Judge Jonah Sherbert sentenced him to 6 years imprisonment and 5 years post-release supervision, according to the news release from the U.S. Department of Justice Eastern District of New York. So he's serving a 6 year sentence and some, post release supervision for basically being a drug dealer, a cheater, a trapper. So yeah, it's basically the whole story, the whole shebang. And I mean, I can already kind of see what you guys would potentially say. We like to talk about things. Just break it down, digest to see what we have to say about the matter. Hearing this story, seeing how this is like the worst case scenario for an artist, especially one that was as big as him. Like I should also have brought up his numbers. This brother's the number of streams, the number of sales that he did when he first came out with those like 3 or 4 records was monumental. Like he could have been on some Michael Jackson type stuff, but it obviously didn't work long term. And we always talk about like do these rappers or do the artists have longevity? In his mind or in his reality, he didn't necessarily have that longevity, and it ended him back where he started. Unfortunately, a lot of rappers or artists do come from a life of crime, and yeah, there was a Boondocks episode on this. I don't know if y'all remember, Thug
Yep.
where he was in the
Yep.
very same situation. It was really funny on
Working at
Boondock.
KFC.
Yeah, yeah. And when it was, and one of the guys had to work at Wendy's.
Oh,
Yeah,
Wendy's. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it was. He was
yeah.
working at UPS, and the other one was working.
Yeah, that was funny watching on Boondocks years ago, but this story isn't necessarily that funny. Which art imitating life is gonna do. Art is gonna be funny, but the IRL is not gonna be funny. But this is nothing to get really philosophical on. I just am interested to know what y'all thoughts on this. Do you feel any level of sympathy for the brother? And do you think do you at least give him props for being relatively accountable? That he's like he now he looks at it and he's the totality of like you know I wasn't making music, so I just went back to doing what I know. I didn't. He didn't necessarily have. It's not like he didn't have anyone in his corner giving him good financial practices. If he had like a good financial manager, people would have told him to save that initial uh, loads of money he was probably making. What do y'all think? What do you think, Ghost?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a sad situation, and it's. I mean, it's fucked up for multiple reasons. For one, the fact that he did go back out into that world, because like I have some sympathies for him, but selling drugs in general is you're not gonna get too much sympathy from me for doing that. But
He
at the
was he
same
was
time, I
selling
do
that hard
understand.
white too.
Jesus, I do understand though that if you grew up in that life, it's easier to sit back and say like get a regular job, do this and that. But if that's all you're accustomed to seeing, and that's all you grew up doing and know how to do, then it's hard to just I don't want to say branch out because it's I don't think that's the right term, but it's hard to get away from that. And if it's easier to go back to doing what you did in the past, then that's what a lot of people will do. And as far as the music stuff goes, I mean, I don't know what he spent his money on. I'm assuming that he was trying to live that
He spent on
lifestyle.
the rapper
And
lifestyle. What you mean? Cars, chains, money. I mean, sorry,
yeah,
cars, women. Sorry, you can't spend money on money, but
yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's did what a lot of young dudes fall victim to and just kind of spend their money away because they to some extent they don't know better, and if they were told better then they just didn't want to listen. They wanted to maintain that lifestyle. But I mean, like I do give him props for acknowledging that. I'm not gonna call him a coward, like that's was his own words. But there are options outside of if the money or sorry if the music isn't working out, either you can buckle down harder on it. And because I mean he made like good, well, fairly good music. Like it wasn't the best ever, but it was like
he
yeah,
produced
he had a
music that
couple
was
of
able to
bangers.
capture a lot of people's attention.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think if he had really hunkered down and put in the work, he could still be successful. But hey, I mean, that's not always how it works. Sometimes artists fall off for whatever reason, but if that wasn't working out, even aside from wanting to live that, well, I guess that's kind of the problem because I was gonna say like it's it's hard you can get a regular job like, and if you don't want to do that, there are options. Like he was pretty well known if you go into sponsorships or stuff that might not be as high key as living and making millions, but you still will make a living without selling drugs. But
You could have started a
what he said
podcast.
is what he says that he wanted to maintain that life, and to do that, he turned back to drugs because he didn't have any other alternatives. Which you
Do you
you can't live that life anymore. Like it's
do you find that to be? Sorry, I didn't let you finish, but I am interested to what you know. Well, do you find that to be somewhat of a, obviously not a valid excuse for committing literal crime, but do you find that to be somewhat of a understandable rationale when people say like they literally don't have any like zero guidance? Do you think if you throw a person out in the world and you give them zero guidance with how to generate a a lawful income, do you think like they could potentially find themselves in this type of predicament?
yeah. I mean, I think if you put an average person, like if we didn't have any all the stories of failure of artists spending all their money, blah blah blah. If you put someone completely ignorant to that in the situation of someone that's making millions a year, I think at least 90% of people would end up spending away all their money and kind of
Mm-hmm.
wasting it because they don't know better. Like it's if you know what to look out for, if you know the pitfalls, if you know what can happen, it's a good example and you can kind of follow that and making your own decisions. But if you don't, then yeah, it's like most people I say will fall into that trap. And I'm not, I don't know what he said. I guess he did kind of say he didn't have any guidance. So
Yeah,
he might have had some people in his corner telling him stuff, but he just didn't want to listen, or he just didn't have anyone telling him what not to do, and people just take advantage of him. So I don't know the ins and outs of his situation, but I definitely understand where he's coming from, and I think there's validity to that, and also to the fact that if you gotten used to that life, it's kind of just human nature. You don't ever really want to go backwards. Like if you started out from nothing and then you made it to be in top 0.1% and you have to go back down to not nothing, but you can't live that life anymore.
yeah,
People just don't, that's not how people don't want to do that. They want to maintain or get better. They don't want to just slowly decline, and to do that or to maintain that status, then people will turn to all sorts of stuff as he did. But
yeah.
I hope for his sake that he's, it sounds like he at least acknowledges where he fucked up, and when he gets out in his 6 years or whatever, he manages to turn his right life around, and like he has some perspective and he can, I don't say live a normal life, but a non-drug dealing life. But yeah, it's just
I mean, oh, by the way, your points were all excellent. But I mean, is there really such a thing as an artist going back to a normal life? Like, first, I mean, honestly, first of all, there is no normal life. When you've been a literal superstar, there's no level like you literally at a minimal. You have to live a lifestyle where you have some level of not protection, but you're
oh,
secure.
you mean
You're secure.
from from a safe, well, I don't know about from just like a notoriety standpoint.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
eh,
So you have to have some level of security, just some level. You don't have to be crazy. You don't have to have security guards on you. But you have to have that. And also, him now being a criminal, you like. I'm sure we have some level of knowledge of like it's not necessarily easy for a criminal to get a job or a felon when you have that in your record. It's almost like
yeah,
he
and
almost has to probably go back in the world of entertainment.
he doesn't have to like it. I get what you're saying, and if he was big, I don't think he's big enough that he'd be instantly recognized on the streets and people
Well,
would be
him in particular, probably so. But unless he's wearing
eh,
a ski mask.
in 6 years though. Like, I don't,
6 years is a long. I was gonna say 6 years ain't the easiest stint. Like one to
yep,
three, like that's like okay. Once you start pushing five, like that's like half a decade is nothing to scoff at.
yeah, I see what you're saying, but it, you don't have to do like entertain. He can, if you wanted to, he could live a normal life. Like, it is very difficult for convicted felons and people that have been in prison to find jobs in quote unquote normal society. But there are options, and they. I'm not saying bro has to work at Walmart for 40 hours a week, but
We already know how you feel about Walmart.
there's there's a there's things like you can get jobs that like certain jobs will be more open to hiring felons, and I'm not saying it's the easiest thing, but it can be done.
Yeah,
So I think if you did end up going back to entertainment, that would probably be ideal for him, and he might not get as big as he is or he was. Maybe he'll be able to maintain a living. I really don't know, but
yeah.
if not, then he's gonna have to do something, because if he gets out of that 6 years and he goes back to that life because he hasn't found, it's really, if you look at it, what's gonna change from his mindset now to his mindset in 6 years, because he hasn't even gone to prison and he wanted to maintain that life. And I don't know, just for his sake, I hope that he doesn't try to go back again. But I don't.
Well, if he goes back to committing
It's
crime, if he goes back to committing crime, nobody's gonna feel bad for him.
yeah. I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, he's the one that selling drugs, that hard white, and he got himself into it. Like, you can have sympathy, but at the same time, you got to face the consequences. The consequences, you got to work like the rest of us
Yeah, like,
plebeians, 9 to 5, and make it work like that. It sucks, but it is what it is.
and some of us with a 95 ain't doing too bad, by the way. But um, I want to hear your thoughts, Ace. But I guess real quick to give some additional context or perspective. You also got to keep in mind, this is not necessarily a person starting from like, and that's why it honestly a little bit interesting to know his finances. Like, we don't want to obviously pocket watch too much, but it'd be interesting to know his finances because if you put out a banger or what a record, a single record, a record that if you even if you're one hit wonder, aren't you in theory better off than the average person because you're still generating some level of residuals from it. So I think I'd be really interested to know how dire his financial situation was. And two, you also got to
Unless he
keep
had a bad deal.
oof. And you also got to keep in mind this wasn't just a random rapper like going back to that lifestyle just because I mean obviously he did say man F it I'm gonna just do it, but you also got to keep in mind he is it's all his doing, so you don't not I'm not trying to pile on the sympathy, but his brother has 6 kids. He probably has family that ended up he having to support just because of the nature of his lifestyle in comparison to his family lifestyle. So all these things kind of probably put more of a battery in his back to pursue certain avenues in life. But yeah, just some additional perspective. What do you think in general, Ace, about this story? You feel sympathetic? Do you applaud him in any way for the accountability it seems like he's taking?
Yeah, I do feel sympathetic in and agree with the way he expressed his
You agree with that stuff that he
shortcomings.
said that I read?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I agree with it almost 100%.
You want me to read it again? I was like, F it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I agree with it too. Like, well,
Sorry.
I see, I know exactly where he's coming from. I'm not saying I agree with his decisions,
Right.
but
Right.
Sorry,
I get it.
I was just more making fun of the diction. But go ahead.
No. Yeah. There's definitely accountability there. I couldn't have assessed the situation better than the way he put it for himself. So, in that way, that's pretty much like where my sympathy is.
Hmm.
For somebody that is actually realizing the mistakes that they made in it. Um, I at the same time am, uh, I'm my thoughts are that yes, while you are acknowledging that you made these mistakes, there's still consequences for it that you have to go through. So if it's the jail time, if it's the 5 years, whatever it may be, you know, um, you gotta serve it. So um, that yeah, that's my thoughts on that aspect of it. Um, and then as far as like you guys were going or trying to completely get out of the I mean, obviously, like you guys said, nobody's gonna have sympathy for him if he goes back to selling drugs after he gets out of jail. But but yeah, like to Quest's point about entertainment being probably the like lowest barrier to entry to him being able to
It's like one of
build
his
himself
only.
back
It's like
up.
it's only like one of his only like viable avenues, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, I agree with that. Like, um, for but a question too is if is that situation what was the situation the same before he started selling drugs again? I'm assuming probably like if he was doing that in his past, um, he he probably had that same he probably had to make the same assessment before he started selling drugs again, or maybe he didn't, um but I'm sure like he's had a criminal record, so that ability to get into like the workforce or whatever before he started selling drugs, that decision or that that barrier was probably still there even then.
Well,
um
we don't know his full criminal record before the rap, but going into, I mean, as we know, for better or for worse, going from a criminal record or going from a criminal his past to being an entertainer, that's not uncommon in rap.
yeah,
It's when it's if you falling off from that, how do
hmm
you get back to a sustainable place?
hmm um but yeah, I don't know, I don't think I have much more to say. um those are pretty much my thoughts.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think there's too much to deep dive on this. Ultimately, it is like that. For better or for worse, that Boondocks episode, just less funny. And if you don't really get a cohesive moral story out of all this, one thing that you definitely know is that, if you mess around with that hard white or that fentanyl, which they didn't get him on that specifically. They got other people in his organization or his team or whatever the case on the fent. If he had gotten the fent charge, he would have went. He would have did more time. Sorry. But if you play around with that, you're going to jail. Crime don't pay. And if you do the time, you gotta. If you do the crime, you gotta be willing to do the time. That's just the fact of the matter. And to be honest, you guys aren't even as like as hard on crime, ultra conservative as I thought you were gonna be. So we were kind of just giving a very general realistic sense of like the consequences of this situation, and still like it is somewhat props due to him for holding for looking at being able to look at a situation and hold himself accountable. Now the actions he makes post prison, that's obviously going to be relatively important because one, he probably will come out with a certain, not, he won't be on top of the world anymore, but with a certain level of like, hey, you've been away for a while, we enjoyed your music before, can you do something again, can you produce something? But it is hard to build up that momentum. Like most rappers, most artists, and especially rappers, don't necessarily get that huge comeback that they once had. But as long as it's something sustainable, like if he could be a, I don't want to start naming rappers, but if he could get to like a, like a Tyga, like a Big Sean level of, like you've made banger music, you can go do shows sometimes, you know. Even though some of the rappers, or even some of the rappers we like, probably aren't like super balling. They probably make their music, get their streams, do shows. I'm sure Vince Staples is living a very, I mean, obviously not average lifestyle, but a modest rapper lifestyle. And you also got to invest. That's also on a more sort of smaller story. Forget the cars, the clothes, the jewelry. You better put your money in an investment account. Is what you better do. Or it could be a gambler like Drake. Drake be betting on like games, and they'd be like for $10 million. Although you could also lose your money in that, so don't gamble, kids. All right, but if there's nothing else on this, we can move on. Still got a couple topics to go, and it's getting a little late. We typically are the late night podcast. If anyone's up on a Saturday evening and they didn't go